So this video is pretty much going to be me just kind of going over retrograde in your birth charts. A lot of people don't really know that you can be born during a retrograde. They don't really know too much about it, and how it affects you, in your childhood and in your adult life as well. I didn't even know that there was retrograde, that I had retrograde in my chart. I'm actually born in a Mercury retrograde, so a lot of the times, you can see I'm saying or I'm stuttering is because I am kind of second guessing what I'm saying, if that makes sense. But it's like an unconscious thing that I'm doing, and that could be because of me being born during a Mercury retrograde. So retrograde pretty much is, the planets are moving backwards. Technically, they're not actually physically moving backwards. They're orbiting around at a different speed, so it looks as if they're going backwards, but they're not going backwards. The sun and the moon never retrograde, so you're never going to be like born in a sun retrograde or a moon retrograde. Like, it's the planets. So a lot of the times with people who have retrogrades in their charts or are born during that time, depending on what planet it is, the characteristics or the traits of that planet kind of are inward, and they're kind of shy about it versus someone with the planet going direct. They're kind of like, hey, kind of like an awkwardness, like expressing those characteristics. A lot of the times there's something missing in the childhood. Like, let's say for instance with a Venus retrograde, if you were born during that time, there may be have the love and affection might have been missing there, and it definitely affects how you are as an adult. So I'll just go right into it. So Mercury retrograde, the most common. About 18% of people are born in the retrograde, me being one of them. So the thinking process is still insightful. The humor, of course, just like a Gemini, is still kind of like off the wall, like quirky, unconventional, but there's a struggle there with doubting yourself and doubting your ability to learn, because you're always kind of like double checking and revising before you actually share, versus Mercury direct is kind of like, yo, I'm confident in this, just kind of like an unknowing, kind of like a silent confidence that a lot of Geminis or people born Mercury planets Gemini and Virgo have. Yeah, so there's just a lot of thinking over and over. It's just like a lot of being analytical a lot, which kind of can be a good thing. I was speaking with someone, we were discussing me being born in a Mercury retrograde, and pretty much saying that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a good thing that you're not necessarily reacting to conversations, or you're kind of like stopping or thinking about it and kind of marinating on it. But it all just depends on the confidence that you have. In your Venus, a lot of people are born, it's like 7 to 8%, I guess, that are born during a Venus retrograde. And of course, like, Venus is a planet of love, so you're still feeling, your feelings are still deep, but you can have a tendency to be really shy, especially in big groups. Sometimes a lot of people are shy in smaller groups because it's more intimate. You guys really don't like superficial things at all. Love is extremely important to them because it is something that they may necessarily not be getting all the time. And it can be hard for you to kind of project love outward, because once again, like I said before, the retrograde, when planets are in retrograde, you may be injecting it inward, so you may feel strongly about someone, but it may be hard to express it, versus someone who is sensual, like a Venus and Taurus, that is direct and is just more like, hey, I love you, I'm sensual, feel on me, whatever. Yeah, so Venus is also the sign, Taurus rules Taurus, and Tauruses are, the sign of material gain. So with that retrograde, your childhood, you may not have had a lot of, material items, and as an adult, you may overcompensate. You may have self-love issues because you might have been rejected by whether, friends or, your parents. But or on the flip side, you could be like, look, I don't need love. I don't need nobody to love me. Yada yada yada. So it's very important for you to know these things because you can kind of connect, how you act. So Mars is ruled by Aries, so that's like the planet of action. So usually, when we think of Aries, we think of they're very self-assertive. So when you have Mars in a retrograde, being self-assertive may be an issue for you. You may not like how direct you're coming off. And you may still have, it's the planet of passion, so you may still have this passion, but you may be embarrassed by that passion that you have, or it just takes you, kind of a while to express it. And usually Aries are kind of like fuck time, they're kind of like, I'm doing it now and then I'll think about time later. But when you're in retrograde, you may be like, yo, this is bad timing. You may think about things like that. And you still may express, your anger in outbursts. You might have an inward outburst with yourself, not necessarily lashing out on other people, but you ain't getting away from that with Mars. You ain't getting away from that. You could feel that you're not strong enough, or competition could be an issue for you as well, which is not an issue for someone who has Mars in direct, because Aries love competition. Yeah, they're pretty much better at going at their own pace versus going at a competitive pace. So like I said before, it's kind of like inward, so you're going in at your own pace instead of the pace that you would normally do if you were direct, because you wouldn't care. You just like, you going at this pace, I'm gonna go faster than you, versus being like, Mars in retrograde, you're like, I'm just going my own pace, and you do that. So yeah, once we get further into the solar system, like past Jupiter, they retrogrades tend to occur more frequently, because it takes longer for those planets to go through the 12 zodiac signs, so they'll be there for a while. So a lot of people who are born like in the same year have Neptune, Pluto, and I believe it's Uranus. They'll have the same. So like if I'm doing my best friend's birth chart, who's born a couple months after me, our birth chart in the beginning all the way to about Jupiter may be different, but then after it's going to be the same. So to have retrograde in Jupiter when you were born, Jupiter is the sign of Sagittarius, or a sign of luck. So you may not necessarily believe in luck. Your belief system may be a little bit different than a Sagittarius's would. You could consistently, be worrying about the future because you don't believe in luck. So you're like, this may not get done. You can be like really impulsive and really like aggressive, because you still, the still is a fire. It's a ruler of a fire sign. So you can be real aggressive if you feel that, luck is not on your side, or if there's no luck at all. And Sagittarius are more reactional people, so they kind of learn from the outside. Like they're people, I'm taking a mental note, versus when you have Jupiter in retrograde, it's kind of like, I'm gonna learn from my own kind of experiences and not really go off what I'm observing. And then we have Saturn. So Saturn is a planet of Capricorn, ruling planet. So it's kind of like a gloomy masculine planet, but at the same time it's a planet of accomplishment, admiration. So a lot of the times when people have retrograde in Saturn, they experience a lot of self-doubt, because in your birth chart, Saturn indicates where you feel inadequate. So you may, feel inadequate a lot. Shit. Your feels are often internalized. You have a brave mask, but on the inside, you do not feel that you can get things done and accomplish things. Your childhood, you you may have not, been disciplined in a way that you should have been, because Capricorns tend to be very disciplined and they learn that from their surroundings. So, from their parents or family or etc. A lot of times Capricorns can feel anxious, but sometimes they don't, because they know that they're going to get the job done by any means necessary. But with this Saturn in retrograde, you can feel really, really nervous or anxious. And there can be situations where you just have these protocols for like a certain set of rules and standards, and it's just kind of like relax, like it's gonna get done. You're still ambitious. You're doubting your ambition, so you're kind of giving yourself more work, if that makes sense. And then we have Uranus, which is the planet that rules Aquarius. So once again, Aquariuses are the most innovative sign, so they love change. They can adapt to change. But with this Uranus, if Uranus is in retrograde when you were born, you don't like change. And if you notice, Aquarians are a lot of they're tech savvy. Uranus is like the planet of technology, the planet of electricity waves. So if you're retrograde, you're gonna be like an old lady or an old man. If you have a retrograde in Uranus, you're gonna be like, I don't trust these cell phones. I don't trust this computer. I don't want to talk with the automated service. Let me talk to a person. So you're gonna be a little bit opposite of what a direct Uranus would be. Or if you are like that, if you do trust technology, it's inward. You're not going to express that you feel that way, because once again, you're going to feel awkward about it, or there's just like this disconnect here when there is a retrograde. So, Aquariuses are kind of like rebels, but with the retrograde in Uranus, they'll rebel, but then they'll just come right back and follow the rules. Versus being, like Rick James, that was Aquarius. He never followed the rules, ever. So it's like, with that Uranus direct, please, rebellious all day. There's a tendency to kind of rebel in a way that people, it doesn't bother people. But, be unconventional in a way that people kind of accept it. But for your Uranus retrograde, you're kind of just like, you rebel for a little bit because, that's just what it is, but eventually you'll get back in line. And then you have Neptune here. Neptune is the planet of Pisces, so the mystic planet, the planet of psychic ability, intuition, being selfless. If your Neptune is in retrograde, it's a lot of the times it's hard for you to express that spiritual side. You hide that that you're vulnerable to the world on a spiritual level, because a lot of the times psychics are Pisces, and being a psychic, you are vulnerable to the world. You have to learn how to channel that energy and that power. And a lot of times with Neptune in retrograde, you feel that you are unable to do that. And you keep a lot of, if you are interested in these things, or if you do, have these unique gifts, once again, it's internalized and it's kept private because, you feel uncomfortable expressing them. And you may have deep faith in something, but you won't be expressing it. Or you could be total opposite and not have deep faith in anything. And, because Pisces are known to be gullible, they can be optimistic. But when your Neptune is in retrograde, if you don't know for certain, if you have to kind of like fill in the gaps, like, is this gonna happen or it's not, you have a tendency to be pessimistic. And a lot of the times, people who have this retrograde, they don't really dream as Neptune would prone you to do. Like, Neptune direct, you're dreamy, especially if your Neptune is in Pisces. You're dreamy, all that. But Neptune in retrograde, a lot of times you'll feel like maybe I'm dreaming a little bit too big, or I can let myself down, I can let someone else down. So, those feelings are just going to be not expressed, or just expressed inward, or very close people to you. And then last but not least, we have Pluto. So Pluto is the sign of control. The planet of control. Scorpio is a sign of emotional control. So Pluto is kind of in your birth chart indicates how you seek control, how you go about that. So depending on depending on what sign you have, you may have a fear of being manipulated, or misused, controlled, betrayed, and that will knock off your control of your mental control, your emotional control. And that's something that Scorpios don't rock with at all. So with that Pluto being in retrograde, Pluto is actually going to be going in retrograde this month of April. It is going to be going in retrograde all the way until September. So there is going to be kind of like that struggle there, that you may feel like someone or something or some force or something is, trying to gain control over you. You may, subconsciously or kind of do it in an unknowingly manner, gain control over everything. So it's important that you're aware, if you do have this, because control, as a lot of times, is an illusion. It's not an illusion, but you have control over everything. So it's an illusion to think that you don't. And even if you do, you have control of how you perceive it. So you got control in essence. Yeah, so a lot of times people with the Pluto retrograde, they don't even really know that they bugging out about, feeling in control. So a lot of the times, if you have that in a water sign, or a sign that's, doesn't rock with authority, like Sagittarius, or a Aquarius, or Aries, that power struggle could really, really, really be there. So yeah, that's it. I mean, you guys can definitely do your own research. It's just kind of like an overview just to share with you guys. Just like I said before, I'm learning, and as I'm learning, I'm just sharing. So yeah, that is all the planets in retrograde in your chart.